Greetings to everyone. My name is Kwame Gonza. As always, we come to you with a weekly update from the African continent. Basically, this show we share what happened on the African continent. This has been a very busy week. It is the week within which the Queen was buried. And then at the same time, we had the United Nations General Assembly. We had the visit of the South African president to the United States. And that visit was very important because in some sense, South Africa has been looked at as a representative of the African continent. So it is important that as Africans, we pay attention to what the South African president, the kind of conversation. I remember we did a breakdown of the expectations as Africans, which we should have from that visit which President Cyril Ramaphosa had in Washington, where he was invited. And he was invited after the visit of Blinken, a Secretary of State of the United States, Anthony Blinken, when he came to South Africa. And the purpose of that visit was for him to present Joe Biden's Africa strategy, so-called Africa strategy. I don't know why they need an Africa strategy after engagement with Africa for the last 600 years. It is today that they need an engagement strategy. So I find it weird. So as Africans, we have to have expectations out of such engagements, and we'll briefly look at that, and then we also had an engagement, the global citizen. We had on the entertainment front, we had Global Citizen in Africa, where various African artists performed in Accra. Artists like Sarkodie, Stonebwoy, we had Asha, I think Chance the Rapper also was there. This event happened last night and it was held in Accra, Global Citizen Festival that happened in Accra. So you welcome my brother Titi. I was just making the introduction of what we are trying to cover. We are trying to look at that engagement. I was introducing to our audience that we are trying to look at the engagement which President Cyril Ramaphosa had with Biden. We looked at that engagement, but the results, we didn't look at them because I remember President Cyril Ramaphosa gave a press conference, and he outlined the discussions which he had with the President of the United States, President Biden. So we didn't get time to break it down and see what happened there. And then we want to look at the United Nations, the speeches at the United Nations, and what happened there. I briefly also today was able to comment on a radio show which I had today on the issue of the African presidents, how they said that they embarrassed us. Some people, they said they embarrassed us, especially Africans, that they were able to be parked in a bus, sort of humiliating in some way. And others, they say they deserved it. They deserve what they got. So that is the issue that we want to look at when we come to those leaders and their behavior when it comes to the issue of the Queen. So President Ruto in Kenya was able to be sworn in. We saw that he was sworn in and he gave his speech. We are trying to cover events that happened for the last 2 weeks. President Ruto was sworn in The Israel ambassador in Morocco also was recalled after uh, sexual assault charges were brought up against him in Morocco. That is very important. Is something which we need to also look at. But rather, I think let us start immediately with the South African issue. Do you think from, I don't know whether Titi, you were able to watch the results of the engagement of the South African president? Uh, you know, uh, 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 when he came out to give the press conference, I think he was still in Washington when he gave that press conference after his meeting with Biden. Because what he spoke about, he said he discussed the issue of Mozambique and how to get the United States involved, because we understand the SADC is there. The SADC force is in Mozambique to try, in Cabo Delgado, to try to quell the conflict there. So he discussed that with President Biden, which I really don't think it is necessary, because we are trying to talk about African solutions to African problems. He spoke about the vaccines. These are some of the things he brought up, that he spoke to President Biden about the vaccines. He spoke about United States companies in South Africa and how to attract more investment in South Africa. And my brother, your screen is quite unstable. Is it possible to? Uh, it is moving up and down. I don't know. Um, yeah, I think it is. It should be stable. It should be stable by now. Yeah, yeah. But your head is a little bit is cut off. Aha, excellent. That way, that is okay. And then your
Hopefully
mic.
stable. I'll
Okay,
get a
I think.
stable prop as we go along. Just continue.
Okay, I think that is okay. So he spoke about investments. He spoke about vaccines. That these are some of the things he discussed with President Biden. He spoke about the fact that we want to manufacture more vaccines in Africa. Uh, he spoke about the idea of I said investments in South Africa, and the transition, also environment. The United States has been through its envoy for a climate change, who's John Kerry, has been pestering the African continent on how it should invest, on what it should invest in and what it should not invest in when it comes to energy. And they are trying to tell us that we should not drill for gas, and we should not drill oil, we should not drill more wells, this kind of attitude. We should not use coal and stuff like that. But we see they are encouraging, and they are not saying anything about Europe, on the issue of energy. And they discussed that transition of energy. They discussed the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. They discussed South African steel, that they want to allow more South African steel into the United States. Uh, they discussed the bill that is the bill which was anti-Russia alignment bill, which is HR 7311. That bill which is in Congress, and they were saying that Russia is a bill which is aimed at countering Russian activities in Africa. But in actual sense, this bill is meant to look at Africa as their colony, as the United States colony. So it should start, deciding. It should continue deciding for Africa which friends to associate with and which. So this looks like a Cold War era stuff. So he discussed that, and he thought that this is not a productive bill. He made it very clear. And the issue of fertilizers, to provide more fertilizers to African farmers and stuff like that. The United States has continued to claim that it has this ability of providing fertilizer to Africa, which I find very ironic. And then they discussed the issue of sanctions and their effect on Zimbabwe, and then the issue of the African Union also needing a seat at the G20 and the United Nations Permanent Security Council. And they discussed the idea that African leaders will meet Biden also in December. They will meet Biden in December of this year for a U.S. Africa summit. Then the reforms of definitely of the United Nations, those ones also are issues which we are discussed, because the United States it has a lot of determining force at the United Nations. So I think this is why he brought it up. And then they discussed also the Russia and Ukraine conflict, in which the United States has and Europe has tried to coerce the African countries into supporting them in this conflict. So I was wondering whether you want to comment on any of those issues, my brother.
Afternoon, Gonza. Is my sound clear or echoey?
Perfect. It's just perfect.
Perfect. All right. Well, there's a lot to uncover, but then luckily I actually wrote myself some notes. Just let me know if I get interrupted, because I'm trying to use multiple apps on the machine. But
no,
then
I can hear you. I can hear you very well. I can hear you perfectly well.
Perfect. Let me start with the just in general. I'm going to touch on a couple of aspects from what you've just said, but then I'm going to put all of them under the South Africa United States relationship, as you were saying that out of the visit by President Ramaphosa to the United States. Well, the first your first submission was to do with soldiers in Cabo Delgado. There is something that Thomas Sankara said, that I've got a book next to me here by Snowden. I want to qualify it. There's a line, I'm going to find it as I'm going along. Because Thomas Sankara says that a soldier without a political ideology is a potential criminal. I have maintained that we should never allow foreign soldiers on our shores, on our land. Because the atrocities that they commit, I mean, we are seeing them with MONUSCO. We've seen them everywhere the United States Army or assistance go. They don't even need bodies at some times. They just need for their effect to be there. And, atrocities are committed. I mean, we can refer, I think a week or two ago, we were looking at the Blackwater massacre that happened in Iraq. And so whenever we allow soldiers into our shores, into our lands, we are basically creating a space for that potential evil that can happen. Because remember, these soldiers that we are looking at, or these people that we consider as soldiers, don't have a political ideology. They are professional soldiers. I'm reading this book. It's actually damaged, but then I guess just by saying like these people know which book I'm talking about. Is Permanent Record by Edward Snowden. He writes in a chapter, I think it's chapter 13. He's writing X-rays. The chapter X-rays. He says something about how a soldier is made, more especially looking at the American machinery. We can go and read it to look as to all the aspects of it, but then there's a line in which he says that for the American army to make a soldier, they must first break down a person. You become a killing machine. You become so tired that the only thing that you can do is take orders. And then once they have you at that point, then they say that you are a soldier. You become, then you are qualified for, promotions and all that. But then we don't need soldiers. President Ramaphosa is not doing Mozambique a favor by asking for more soldiers from the United States to come into Mozambique. He should actually stop with that. I'm not going to touch on the vaccine issue because I would have to refer to Magufuli. I would have to talk about Magufuli, but then we don't want to go there because we know that Magufuli had tests done and then the outcome of that. So I'm just simply going to jump to investment. Investment by the United States or the proverbial West into South Africa. Well, I am in South Africa and we are experiencing a rolling blackouts, let's call them. They call them load shedding stages. We are now, I think, at stage 3. Stage 8 basically means that half the country is dark at all times. And mind you, I'm not sold to this new CO2 economy that is being created. I seriously think that countries should be allowed to actually, develop their energy. Energy is the ability to do work. I learned that in primary. All countries need energy, and right now what is happening with South Africa is that they are being discouraged from investing in energy generation capacities and all that. So investment in itself by the West.
Yeah, I think not only South Africa, because remember the sorry for interrupting you. You remember that the South Africa, why it was invited, why President Cyril Ramaphosa was invited. Remember that South Africa is being looked at as one of the most important, is looked at as a leader on the continent. The voice, South Africa has been very vocal about the United States interference in Africa. Remember the Minister of International Relations, Naleda Pandor, when she made her, strong statements and strong speech during the press conference when Blinken was around, and she said that there was, and these things were not captured actually by the media, but she said they didn't emphasize them. What I mean. She said that the wars mostly which we have on the continent are because of the interest in Africa's resources. But nobody mentioned that. You could see that even Blinken himself, he did not mention about it. He did not say anything about it when she said this. So she said that Africa has to find its own position, and this attitude of bossing Africa around, we think we will not accommodate. So one of the things which journalists and other people and writers and analysts identified is that the message being communicated to South Africa by the Biden administration is for the whole of the African continent. And because these are the coercive measures, last week, I think it's this or last week, you remember that the European Parliament European Union Parliament was trying to coerce, even up to now, is still trying to coerce Uganda to abandon its 1,400 East African crude oil pipeline. 1,400 kilometers. The pipeline which is supposed to come from Western Uganda up to Tanga in the East African community in Tanzania, Tanga in Tanzania. So they are trying to tell us that when we construct this pipeline, then we are going to destroy the environment which is in Africa, which is not in Europe. So this is where the arrogance, is unbelievable. The arrogance of these Anglo-Saxons is unbelievable. And when we say that they are white supremacists, and they say we are not white supremacists, so how can you sit in Europe like this is, they are looking at it as if this is this is 1885, where you will sit at the Berlin conference and make laws for us, and this is what we are rejecting. So the deputy, speaker of parliament in Uganda had to respond strongly, and it was supported by the president, that this is not neo-colonialism and racism that you are trying to bring us here. And Total, as an European company, if it tries to abandon this project, it will bear the consequences because it will have to pay. That is what the president, for negating, the promises on the contract, the agreement which they agreed with the Ugandan government and the East African community, for the construction of this project. Because Total, in the first place, the president of Uganda did not want to construct this pipeline. He wanted the refinery in the region to serve that region, because that region, it doesn't have oil refinery. Kenya, Tanzania, all of them are importing refinery. Total insisted that they should do a refinery. Total itself. So if Total attempts to back out of this project, and when it is the one which coerced and wasted our time for us to build this because it is being pestered by Europeans, it being, pressured by Europeans, then it will have to bear the consequences of this. So the project is being worked on together, as Total is the one leading, together with CNOC, and then the East African community, Tanzania and Uganda, they have all shares into the project. So this coercion which you are talking about the energy policy, is an European thing, is an Anglo-Saxon thing of trying to coerce Africa on where it should go, which resources Africa should consume. But they are not willing to share into the benefits which they have accrued for all this time when they are polluting the environment. But they are telling us that we should not pollute the environment. You see, you remember recently in Netherlands at the summit which was organized, the Africa Adaptation Climate Summit that was supposed to happen, the African presidents went. The chairman of the African Union, Musa Faki, the chairman of the African Union, Macky Sall, the president of Macky Sall, who is the chairman of the African Union, went with Leonardo and Tshisekedi, and the Europeans did not turn up. The Americans did not turn up. Only the African leaders, 3 of them, were there. And they have negated on their promises. The Paris Agreement, Paris Climate Agreement. They were supposed to give Africa $100 billion. That money has not been anywhere. That $100 billion was supposed to support Africa in fighting the effects of climate change, drought, and stuff like that. That money has never been given to Africa. So I find it dubious that Biden wants to discuss with Africa through President Ramaphosa about climate change. I don't know which type of climate change he's talking about now, when they are allowing Europe to switch on coal plants which are polluting more compared to the gas that would have come from Russia. So I just wanted to throw in that so that we can understand that any discussions that happened between Biden and President Ramaphosa is representative of whatever is the policy of the United States on the African continent. That is why even Blinken, when he came to Pretoria to give his speech, which he called Biden's strategy for Africa. So it was for the whole African continent. So that strategy of engagement with South Africa is for the whole African continent. I just wanted us to take note of that so that we don't miss it. Please continue, brother.
It's awesome. Okay, I'm gonna try and keep my train of thought because I am going to have to consider that. So I'm going to end up. I'm not sure what I'm going to end up with, but then let me begin with this because you touched on U.S. policy. For that one, I just want to conscientize all of us to say that U.S. policy is always by force. U.S. policy is force. Questions can come to me on that one, but then I'm going to continue in the interest of time. And then let's look at summits in themselves. I mean, US policy is which summits are they going to have? When are they going to have them? Who is going to attend them? Because remember, what are summits? When we talk about the green transition, the conference that African leaders went and the West did not pitch up. I mean, we can look at it from this is disrespectful. And then we can also look at it from a perspective of what it really is. African leaders are asking for assistance. They're asking for dollars. They're asking for money. They are asking for the US to come into their country and dictate policy, basically, because they are opening up their respective countries. They're opening up their respective countries to exploitation, basically, because they want United States dollars to circulate. That's the policy of the United States. The policy of the United States is to bring US dollars into all the countries that they go into. I mean, I said that I was going to start today's show with my first executive orders, 14064. That's the first executive order by the US that I actually know because I just Googled it because of this show. The US effectively took 1.5 trillion reals from Iran and calls it aid. That's what Biden did. Just earlier in Feb, I think it's 14th or 15th of Feb, Biden did that. They basically go and sanction the DAS Afghanistani bank, the DA Afghanistan bank, and they are taking property that used, and by property they mean the foreign currency which was kept in America, the land holdings which are in America by Afghanistan. For some reason, Afghanistan felt it useful for them to actually have holdings in the US, and they actually had holdings in the
It's
US.
stealing. This is the stealing,
Yes,
actually. We should not even call it sanctions.
they are
I heard
literally
about,
stealing.
yeah, I think it is the
Yeah,
Chinese
let
I
me.
heard complaining about the Chinese were
Yeah,
encouraging the
yeah,
United
no,
States, the Chinese and Russia.
The Chinese are actually on the case. The Chinese and Russia are on the case of Syria, because 85% of Syria's oil is being taken by the US Army for dubious reasons. We're not going to touch on that because, well, we've been touching on it in previous episodes. Anyone can go and check that out. But then I want to keep my train of thought because we do have an indictment on the show. I was checking the YouTube comments, and then they talk about how, oh, well, the indictment is on you, but not on us. But then because you always have to come and drop a caveat in it for me to say, please also consider this. So I just want our viewers to know that we have that agreement of saying that if I am missing something on my side as an analyst, as a geopolitical scientist, basically, you can also please let me know, because I am not omniscient. I'm not like, I don't know everything, and I can also forget the caveats that you are able to bring in. So, U.S. policy is by force. I want to keep my train of thought because we have to go back to the issue of South Africa's electricity. And before we come to that, it's funny that you mentioned Total. It's very funny that you mentioned Total, because there is the pipeline in Uganda from the west to, I think it's going to Kenya now. It was supposed to go to Tanzania, but now it's going to Kenya. Or was it supposed to go to Kenya to Tanzania?
Yeah, it was supposed to pass through Kenya
To Mombasa.
to Mombasa, to the port of Mombasa, but they did their physical studies, and they determined that because of security reasons, Al-Shabaab is very close to Kenya, they could blow up the pipeline and stuff like that. So they decided to pass it through and pass it through Tanzania and send the oil to Tanga instead of Mombasa.
All right. Yeah, you see, so we have that. And funny enough is that they're talking about, like, you see, tautology, what is said. We need to, when I say that the summits are very important, who attends the summit and who attends the summit, what is discussed, and what agreements are signed, that is more important than the mere fact that, oh, there was a summit and the US president made it and was his presence was honorable. I mean, Total is also in South Africa, and in South Africa, Total has had a pushback from residents in the Western Cape who are actually picketing against Total seismic activity, seismic tests in the Western Cape waters. So, how are they claiming global, climatic change, and but then they are also doing both. They are playing both parts of this game, basically. In South Africa, they're exploring for gas. In Uganda, they are trying to get a pipeline to get the gas out of it. You see, the consideration that there was supposed to be a refinery. I actually published the story a day or two ago to say that, oh, by the way, guys, I did not know this, but there's apparently the pipeline. That's when I was learning about the pipeline, to say that, why are we still constructing pipelines? I mean, I want to come to the no to pipelines movement, which is happening throughout wherever this pipeline is supposed to go. Residents are complaining, and I want to give it to Total that is evidence that once the pipeline itself is completed, the residents are going to steal the oil. The residents are going to steal the product, because they already are giving a pushback. We were supposed to learn. This has happened before in the early 90s, 91, 92, 93. It happened with Cancer. We were in the Niger Delta. We are supposed to learn, totally supposed to learn. But right now, I find it very strange that Total, after having committed to the refinery, that now they turn around and say that for what you call them, for environmental reasons. I mean, there is Vanessa Nakate in the DRC. That young woman is actually trying to champion the Congo rainforest to say the climate change situation is getting out of hand. I mean, Africa, yes, is contributing only 3%, but it still hurt us as a people. Climate change is still a concern for us because we are all about longevity. We are all about sustaining our footprint here on this planet. So now we need to really look at the nuances that is being played by these multinational companies. I mean, Shell to this day, Shell is actually running losses in the Niger Delta because in some parts of Nigeria the oil is being stolen, and in some parts of Benin oil is being sold on the streets because it comes from Nigeria, and Shell is not making any profits because of that dichotomy of people stealing what they call terrorists. Basically, when they took it out of Tanzania and into Kenya, is because they're trying to say that, okay, we might be close to Al-Shabaab, or some villages might be giving more of a pushback. So back to investment, what are they investing in South African, in African countries? What are they investing in, over and above the fact that they promised $1 billion for climate change and they did not bring it in? And from a personal perspective, really, let me do mention that we don't want their money. We don't need it. Zimbabwe has shown that. The fact that they're calling for the sanctions against Zimbabwe coming to UNGA 77. They're calling again for the sanctions against Zimbabwe. The IMF and the World Bank are beginning to polish up Zimbabwe. They want back in because the people of Zimbabwe have shown that we don't need your dollars. Like in the words of Bob, we are not mindful of the European sanctions. We are not European. The sanctions can be there and we can actually still prosper as a people. We don't need the dollars from the United States. When the United States says that they're giving us dollars, they're taking our own money. We have just seen it with Executive Order 14064. So there's a crisis in South Africa. I mean, a crisis right now. People cannot watch our broadcast right now because they are in a blackout. I was almost unable to actually join the meeting because I was in a blackout. Every now and then electricity is taken away for I think now at stage 3 it's at 2 hours a day. But then trust me, as Samir said, in the villages there is not even network. In the villages, in the remote villages, there's not even it actually goes for 3, 4, 5 hours, while I am in the city and getting only 2 hours. So we can look at that I was complaining over the weekend because we were at level 5. Trust me, in the villages they did not have network, they did not have electricity, and then to add on top of that all, I personally did not have water for the whole of last week, and I'm staying in the city, and I actually have to move now because I need water wherever I am. I told them, I called the municipality and I told them that I need water. I'd rather not have electricity at all, but I need water. So those are the other caveats that we are going to bring into it. Let me finish with the AFCFTA, because the the African Continental Free Trade Area, it's a way. My sister is trying to educate me on it, and I'm also attending panel discussions being hosted by libertarians in Africa. And one of them is part 3 is today. I'm trying to understand AFCFTA from a scholarly perspective because we get excited over things that we don't know. I'm not going to give an opinion on AFCFTA, but my sister is telling me that it's a way of Western equity to come in. They are trying to relax they're basically using the World Trade Organization, the world organizations, the UN tentacles. They're trying to use those tentacles to get a hold on Africa and to entrench their interest. That's what my sister is saying. I'm still trying to study the entire concept of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. It seems, at face value, it seems like a brilliant idea, but we've seen brilliant ideas before. We know what happens with brilliant ideas. So yes, Kwame, with that being my submission on the SA-US dichotomy and how it, like you're saying, Cyril or South Africa I mean, Nigeria is now the continent's biggest gross domestic product, but we know that South Africa is still the industrial hub of the entire continent. And as Khafela Wamahohodi puts it, South Africa is the gateway to Africa. Whatever happens in South Africa happens to the rest of Africa. So when Cyril goes around making all these agreements, I mean, putting the country, just the country, at risk of, I mean, we don't have electricity sovereignty as we speak right now. Foreign investments has been like invited over, I mean, in the guise of what is called the IPPPPPP. There's a couple of P's there. In independent, it starts with independent power procurement producer, I don't know, but then we call them simply IPP. They are signing contracts with Western countries because we don't have the capacity to do what they want to do. ESCOM is signing agreements that sees it spending 11 billion rands. I'm not sure if it's 11 billion rands or dollars, but then that money is being exchanged with a company in France to actually buy 420 megabytes. I'm not sure if that price is actually healthy, but I know that the public protector of South Africa was investigating ESCOM, was saying that somebody has lodged a complaint against ESCOM to say that ESCOM is actually playing against the country, is buying electricity at, like, I think it was 53 cents per measure. The smallest measure is 53 cents. They buy it at 53 cents, but they can only sell it at 18 cents, meaning that they know for certain, they know that they're making a loss, but because they want to prop up the IPP contract, they actually blow up the price and blow the whole thing out of proportion. So yeah, as we continue, I'm going to come back to Russia and the global way of it after a while, but then I think for the SAUS dichotomy, I can leave it there for now.
Yeah, thank you, my brother. And on that issue of the energy, maybe you can give me a little bit more light. What are the main sources of South African energy, and what happened? Because during the times of Zuma, I heard about the nuclear power plants, because these I think the person who was talking about these nuclear power plants being built was envisioning these crises which were coming, the energy crisis which were going to come in the future. And what is the issue? What is the complexity or the whole comprehensive issues surrounding the nuclear power plants? Because I believe these, many people, even from Nkrumah's time, were talking about Africa engaging in nuclear energy. And from the Western point of view, they really don't think that Africa has a right to engage in sophisticated, forms of technology, things like nuclear energy. We need to have nuclear energy to produce enough power for ourselves to drive our industries. And one of the things which Nkrumah established in Ghana was the Ghana Atomic Agency. And immediately when he was overthrown, actually, when by the time they overthrew him, there was a nuclear reactor on its way from the Soviet Union to Ghana. And when the Soviet Union learned that Nkrumah had been overthrown, that nuclear reactor, I think, was branched either and taken somewhere else. So it was never brought to Ghana because Nkrumah was overthrown. So I want to understand what happened with the nuclear reactors, because I remember that South Africa under Zuma, wanted to produce nuclear energy to enter. I think it was, the company is called Rostec of Russia, which was supposed to come together with South Africa to build those nuclear sources of energy, so that South Africa will be able to have more energy to take care of its needs. And I think that this person who thought about this was some sort of visionary, was able to see the future. Now these problems have come back to bite South Africa, the energy needs, and now we have problems with the energy. What is the cause of this crisis with the energy, really? Can you unmute yourself? Can you unmute yourself?
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I was saying that it's a pain to it's like a sore pain to the eyes, really, because I mean, for me, I'm very close to it, and we see it happen. We see the management of ESCOM, we see the executive of ESCOM, we see the oversight of ESCOM, we see the president himself having led effectively. He's led ESCOM for 10 years. Some analysts and some articles are putting it at 10 years. Ever since he became, there was a war room, there was an energy war room during Jacob Zuma's time. And the leader who the commission, there was a commission of inquiry into corruption allegations, and one of the entities was ESCOM. And then evidence given in that commission under oath is that Ramaphosa was the de facto executive at ESCOM. 3 days of a week were spent creating and detailing reports which were supposed to be submitted to this war room that Ramaphosa led. And we are not going to forget that Ramaphosa himself has been caught making what should we call them, promises and making assurances that the energy crisis in South Africa is a thing of the past. He said that at Davos. Not only did he say that, his financial minister at the time, the former South African Reserve Bank governor, also actually echoed the same, to say no, this is a man by the name Tito Mboweni. He said that no, we are now back, we are on track, and we've got all these things. And I have actually been banned on Twitter. I guess I crossed one of the lines, and I'm now banned on Twitter. And I was in the middle of creating a trend there, detailing the issue with ESCOM, because what is happening at ESCOM? I saw that President Zuma, during his time, I mean, this stood out for me as I was doing the research. President Zuma, during his time, signed a law, a bill into law. Parliament made a suggestion and he signed it. And we know the way in which it works in South Africa, it is only what the presidents want as law that becomes law. So if the president doesn't sign the law, it is not law. Zuma had a 2-page law signed during his tenure, giving 60 billion to ESCOM to actually do whatever they wanted to do, make their investments, do whatever they want to do. But then we cannot be quiet to the corruption that happened with that deal. Corruption happened, but what did Zuma, in his capacity as president, do? What did he do? He gave money to ESCOM to do whatever they wanted to do. And this is how governments actually create money. Zuma did not care, as the fiscal head of the government, he did not care where the money came from. He just told National Treasury to say, tell the South African Revenue Services to create 60 billion. So now, we are at a point where the Quebec power station, and this is the comic way of it. When you look at nuclear is deadly, nuclear is powerful. There is a reason that when Bob Marley sings that have no fear for atomic energy, and I want to walk along those lines. I don't want to have fear for atomic energy. I have no fear for atomic energy, but we must appreciate atomic energy for what it really is. It is destructive, of course. We can look at Nagasaki, we can look at what's the other town in Japan? Okay, now you are on mute. Nagasaki and Japan, Nagasaki and...
Yeah, I don't know whether it is Okinawa or something. I don't remember very well. Nagasaki.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think we can just go with Nagasaki. But I think where the United States dropped those
yes. You see, So let's just say that the only time that nuclear energy was used against civilian populations is by the United States, who are playing God over nuclear for some reason. The only country to ever
is Hiroshima.
Hiroshima. Thank you very much.
Hiroshima.
yeah, we do need to have our researchers on guard to say that every time we raise something, they're able to actually pick it up. But then what did the US do? After using nuclear power, they try to restrict other nations from nuclear power. Remember that it is nuclear power. It is there's an organization called International for Atomic Energy Atomic Association. It has to
Yeah,
do with
I
atomic
think it's the
energy.
International Atomic Agency.
Yes, it's the IEA said that okay, we might have found. I got this from the secretary of, I mean the ambassador to the US to the UN. I mean the United States ambassador to the UN said that they are going to support the Atomic Energy International Organization in their push to actually access Iran and check whether there are nuclear weapons or there is nuclear grade, whatever, yellow cake, let's call it. So the issue of energy, Zuma did a lot for the issue of energy, and I'm gonna go back to I think it's our second or first episode, when some of my friends said that South Africa cannot be sovereign because you guys don't know how to make energy. But I've seen that we do actually have the black intelligentsia in the likes of Machela Koko to actually produce energy. We do have the black executive, the black
I,
economist.
yeah, so for me, my view on this, when it comes to the ability, is not that we cannot do it. Okay,
Yes.
it is we have enough resources to produce energy, whether it is from we have enough intellectual firepower, whether we are talking about
Yes.
professionals in atomic energy, whether we are talking about in manufacturing, but there is something which is wrong, and this is the very reason why Nkrumah said, "Seek ye first the political kingdom, and all the other things shall be added unto you." I think what Nkrumah was seeing is that control your systems of leadership, the rest will follow. All the other things will just follow that trail. You know, it will be like a trailer, but the head, the locomotive, has to be the politics. You have to put your leadership in order. We have enough firepower to develop nuclear reactors, even to learn. Africa right now,
Yes.
the literacy rate now is going to 70%. The literacy rate on the continent. People have been educated since independence. So we can't say that we don't have enough firepower. We have the resources, but there is organization. There's lack of organization of our energy. I mean, our human and material resources, and this is because of from my view, and if I'm adhering to Nkrumah's view of what this continent is supposed to be, you know, and how it is supposed to develop, the speed at which it is supposed to develop. If I'm right, then we are supposed to look at the political aspect, put our
Yes.
leadership in order. If we continue to run a political infrastructure that is colonial
Yes.
in nature, there's no way. So our forces are supposed to be concentrated. Our energy, our power, everything that we have is supposed to be concentrated at unifying the continent. The prescriptions which our ancestors gave. I said it today at a program that the African continent cannot be built on ideas from Europe. The African continent cannot be built on ideas from the United States or from the Anglo-Saxons or from the Chinese or the Indians or the Benin. No. Our ancestors laid out the blueprint from how the African continent should be constructed. Robert Sobukwe from South Africa laid out the ideas of what he saw that Africa should be.
Yes.
Nkrumah laid out the ideas. The blueprint is there. He wrote everything down. Even in a single speech which he gave at, in 1963, there is a simple blueprint. Is a summary of the blueprint. Honorable Marcus Garvey, what did these people want the continent to be? So we are facing all these problems because the understanding of our forefathers has been neglected. Nuclear energy, why would the United States advise us on what to do in the energy sector? Why? The United States should not advise us on what to do when it has been polluting the environment.
Thank you.
The majority of the pollution has been done by the United States. So whether we are talking about the oil, the gas, and the nuclear energy and how we should use it, we should look at what our ancestors, what did George Padmo want this continent to look like? What did Walter Rodney want this continent to look like? What did Nyerere want this continent to look like?
Yes.
These are the people. So we are facing all these problems because our leaders have decided to get stuck onto the Western way of thinking of things, and so they are bossed around, they are driven around in buses and packed in buses and driven around, and they are given orders, follow this, follow that. We see that President Magufuli was trying to follow an independent economic policy and the political policies. And Suluhu, I don't know whether she lacks, President Suluhu of Tanzania, I don't know whether she lacks in confidence. Immediately she came to power, she installs and appoints this guy, Tony Blair, as economic advisor. What does Tony Blair know about economics? He's a murderer who killed 1 million people in Iraq, innocent people. So I don't understand whether it is lack of confidence to some of these leaders, but we have to reiterate so that the next generation of African leaders can understand that this continent and all those who are watching, this continent cannot be built on any idea other than the ideas of our forefathers, not the ideas of George Bush, not the ideas of not the ideas of Obama, not the ideas of Bill Gates or whoever, Richard Branson, all these guys. All that is rubbish which has to be discarded if we are going to construct this continent. And we have to understand that without unifying the African continent, there's nowhere we can go. We'll continue to rotate around circles, discussing minor problems, horizontal issues, when the vertical issue is that we have to unify and get power and start acting independently as Africans. And so this is what I see. So I really don't see any lack in intellect when it comes to us as Africans. There's no lack in resources. When the real resources are in a unified Africa, we have enough market. We do not lack enough intellect, the intellectual capability, intelligence that we need to consult these guys. They should come and tell us. President Xi Jinping himself in 2014, when he came to South Africa during the Africa Summit, China-Africa Summit, which happened in South Africa, President Xi Jinping said China is in a position to help Africa to develop by giving it technology. China has developed, with enough technology that it can help Africa. But China cannot help. No one took that offer on, all the African presidents. So China cannot help us if we are not organized, if we are not unified and speaking with one voice. There's no way we can take on such an offer of technology transfer from China to Africa. China is already engaged in building nuclear reactors. Russia is engaged. So this technology is already there. So the disorganization is the one which I think is preventing us. And that issue, let
me complete the thought, because remember, you are coming here on the technical capacity of Africa to be independent. Africa can do whatever Africa wants to do. The skill set is there. At some point, we regarded Zimbabwe as being 92% educated. This was during President Mugabe's time. Somehow there was a skyrocketing of the education system. However destructive some education systems, we need to also keep, I'm not going to publish this one, but then we need to somehow develop our own intelligentsia, our own innovative ways. How do we protect our own inventions and innovations? Because when we talk about Dr. Magufuli, Magufuli was a doctor, right? When you talk about Dr. Magufuli, you are also looking at COVID and what he did with COVID. And there is in South Africa a medical practitioner by the name Dr. Taban, who was on a show, having pioneered a procedure to actually take the COVID virus out of a person. No medication. It was a biopsy of sorts. It was a surgery surgery method. But then we know what happened to him. He kept quiet. After sometimes you are beholden to whoever is paying your bills. We know what happens with COVID dynamics in Madagascar. Madagascar came up with COVID dynamics. Magufuli bought COVID dynamics. Magufuli is said to have been denying COVID 19, but Magufuli bought COVID dynamics from Uganda, I mean, from Madagascar. So the whole process of saying that what is Africa capable of, we know that Africa is capable. We are certain that Africa is capable. We know that even in the Western countries, it is Africans who are pioneering those inventions. We can talk about the likes of Latimore. We can talk about the
Yeah.
likes of
Yes, bro.
yes.
For me to under, let me just interrupt you here a little bit. The issue of, for example, of the nuclear reactors during Zuma's time. What happened to those reactors that we were not able to build them? Are they still on course to be built? And what
Yeah,
what
okay.
exactly was it? Did some sabotage from foreign countries, foreign entities like the United States, the neo-colonial countries, that they did not want us to have these plants, or what exactly? Because I believe that
Sabotage.
the person who pioneered this idea of building these nuclear reactors was looking at solving these problems which we are seeing today of energy, the energy crisis.
Yes, Zuma.
So
Zuma pioneered it. He was
is this
pioneering.
blackmail? Was someone trying to blackmail him or what?
No, Zuma during his just before he was arrested and taken to jail for about 3 out of 6 months, to say that he did not go to the state commission when he was supposed to, but then he did actually he went and made an announcement that he is no longer going to participate because it was a masquerade. One of the dishes, because he's a politician, they always play politics, they will always delve into politics. He said that, you know what happened with you guys, we wanted to give you nuclear sovereignty, we wanted to give you nuclear power, but because you were clever, you were not educated, you were clever, all you could say was what the media dictated for you to say. It was, and then he said this like exactly the way I'm saying it, as if in nuclear. This is how a proper white, I mean black person, a clever person will say. We call them clever blacks, as if we need nuclear, because they have bought into the mentality that they do not understand. It's not scientific to them. Just the mere fact that the US has said that nuclear is bad, while the US depends on nuclear, while France wants to depend on nuclear, because for that they are enriching. The fact that Iran depends on nuclear power is not mentioned. Okay, I think I was just okay, there was some sound coming in the background there. Sorry about that. So nuclear is very important, and Zuma wanted nuclear sovereignty. But then what happened? It's manipulation, of course. When Zuma started talking about nuclear power, there were some attacks which came to him. When Zuma started trying to, I mean, indigenize ESCOM, I'm gonna call it that. You can ask me further questions on that, but then he was trying to indigenize ESCOM. There were attacks on him, and I guess the attack that finally won was the attack coming from the public protector, the then public protector, Fulima Donzela, awesome woman. She was able to issue a report which was anti-Zuma in nature. It actually went against the laws, the established law of the land. I mean, the president is supposed to appoint any commission, but they subverted that because it was not legally sound, but it was not legal. It was not legally sound to say that Zuma should appoint a commission, but because they had to investigate him, but it was also illegal. It was not within the prescripts of the law. So the judiciary, which is a branch of government in South Africa, took the law into its own hand. It created its own precedents, and then it did not allow for parliament to actually pass an act because they wanted to get rid of Zuma as quick as possible. And I guess the weight of the movement Save SA actually gave a lot of weight. I mean, the media was always on the Save SA movement, and that guy Malusi Gigaba, thank you for the KVS, my brother. I'm going to end up with the Netherlands, but let me touch on Malusi Gigaba. Malusi Gigaba went on CNN when Zuma was being attacked, and when Zuma was in a corner, when Zuma was in office 24/7 trying to, like, find a means to actually remain president of the country. Remember, Zuma was taken out of office before his time was done. He was actually supposed to, remember, any summit that a president, that a leader attends, he presides over, he makes a very critical decision. They wanted to take Zuma out of the decision making process so that things like the nuclear deals should not go through. When Russia realized that the nuclear generator was going, I mean, turbine was going to land in the hands of Ramaphosa, they actually recalled it. I guess that's what I'm getting from you. I did not actually follow that story. But then let's honor. Actually, let me end. I don't want to honor anybody. I'll honor anybody later. Let's end with the Netherlands. The Netherlands has proposed to South Africa that one of their power stations should be converted. I have actually made a note here. The Netherlands deal is that they must convert power to agriculture. So right now, South Africa, being, I'm gonna make a judgment to say here, 60% of South Africa is on sustenance farming. Well, that is being encroached upon because there is a lot of farms. There's a lot of malls. I'll come back to Dr. Mitwale later. He's talking about malls because South Africans are being made to rely on buying food rather than making food. When the Netherlands comes in and say that South Africa has to compromise energy, South Africa now has to compromise energy for the benefit of agriculture. That is what the US, you see, the Netherlands is actually trying to take back the baton because the whole thing was started by the Netherlands, the Dutch. They are the first people to go around trying to find new lands. They are the first people to try and cartograph the entire African country to establish trading posts everywhere. Now they're coming in and they're saying that South Africa must convert a power station during the gall in that during a power crisis. They're saying that take out your power station and make an agricultural facility. What kind of offer is that? This is basically dangling food in front of a hungry person and also dissing them because they do not have power. That's actually what the Netherlands is doing. So when it comes to the power sovereignty of Africa and South Africa, we are supposed to have General Assembly as a separate discussion. Just give it 2 hours and actually just talk about the 77th summit of the United Nations, because on that one I'm going to touch on the likes of Dr. Mitole. What exactly is the UN doing? Remember, you said political integration of Africa is Nkrumah's, the Pope of Pan-Africanism. Nkrumah says that we need to unite. I'm finishing with the AU because today, when we are talking about Nkrumah is no longer there. Nkrumah remains in his literature. He wrote how many books? You have read all of them, I think.
I think he wrote about 21 books and pamphlets.
Exactly. So with Nkrumah, we don't have to actually go and make any judgments. Nkrumah is there. He exists in his books. But right now, today, as we speak, who is Nkrumah of Africa? Who is the Nkrumah of Africa? Who is going to champion this huge task that is set before us? I want to appoint him, Dr. Edward Mitole. He's worked at the UN, he's worked in Geneva, he's been all over the place. And right now he's giving, he was actually an advisor to President Zuma. He used to give interviews on the SABC because he was the advisor, so they always had him to try and establish exactly what is in the mind of the advisors of Zuma. And Dr. Mitole is today what Nkrumah was then. Dr. Mitole is actually speaking about nuclear sovereignty. He's talking about not necessarily nuclear, but energy sovereignty. Let's remember that it was nuclear. It was the yellow cake mines of the Congo and Katanga that made the US use the tool that the UN has become to actually go into Congo and cause destabilization and end up in cahoots with Belgium to assassinate Patrice Lumumba. It was energy, it was nuclear. When it comes to nuclear, the US is very
sensitive.
The US is
very sensitive when it comes to nuclear. I do also remember that in one of the memos which was published before the death of Prime Minister Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba, is that the United States was saying that they don't want the uranium of the Congo to get in the hands of the Soviet Union. And so even in
Yes.
some people have said that the bomb which was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki actually was made from uranium that was got from the Congo. But that's an issue, and we are saying that President Cyril Ramaphosa, you have to come out and address these issues. Africa needs to work together from the African Union. These issues concerning energy, concerning agriculture, concerning fertilizers, we do not need the United States to help us in doing these things. These things should not be sent to the United States and the United Nations to be discussed, but rather they should be discussed at the African Union. It is necessary that if these issues you cannot discuss them within the SADC region, for us to have a comprehensive and a cohesive strategy on tackling these issues, we think that as Pan-Africans and young Africans and the next youth and the youth and the next generation of leaders, we do not buy the idea that we should be going to the United States and Europe to beg and to ask that these things should be done for us. We should wait for the United States to come and invest here, because I understand that one of the things that was discussed by President Cyril Ramaphosa, because I want to touch on him very quickly because we have a lot of other things that we want to touch on, was that President Cyril Ramaphosa discussed when he was talking about the industry, that the United States should come and invest in Africa, or should come and invest in South Africa and Africa, so that the Africans can get jobs. We don't want this attitude of getting jobs all the time. We want to create entrepreneurs. When will Africa create its own entrepreneurs to the extent that we also have investors who go out there and invest in other countries?
Yes.
The investors in the United States did not come from the moon, and they did not come from Mars and space to drop. They were created. So we need the attitude of Africans and African leaders who want to create African entrepreneurs. We need our entrepreneurs also to have companies like ExxonMobil. We need companies like Shell, our own entrepreneurs, so that these companies also can go out there to eat the world, just like how they are eating our resources. So we would like to request you, President Cyril Ramaphosa, and all the other African presidents, to adopt this attitude and abandon the attitude of going out there to always go to beg and to say that the United States should give us the ideas of energy. The issues of Africa's energy should be discussed at the African Union, and should be discussed, if need be, secretly within the leadership. I remember that President Museveni was saying that he was discussing with President Zuma on whether to send private jets to Libya, so that they can be able to fight against NATO when it was there. So these kind of thinking, we have to adopt this kind of thinking, that we should discuss some of these things in secret. We need nuclear energy. We cannot avoid it. We cannot avoid using nuclear energy. We cannot avoid drilling for gas to use as Africans. You see, we are seeing that South Africa is depending, 65% of its energy is coming from coal. So we cannot avoid to use these sources of energy if it is what we have, and we have to grow. Our people have to feed. The United States, if it is not willing to give us some of the gains which it made through the pollution of the environment for the last 300 years, then it should not be telling us how to develop with our energy policy. The United States should not be telling us how to go about our energy needs. So we think that the African leaders, President Cyril Ramaphosa, as South Africa has been singled out as a leader on this continent, we need to be firm in our convictions that we have to take our own way. We have to take matters and in our own way, not only economically and industrialization, but also politically. We need to start exploring new systems of governance on this continent, because this neo-colonial, this neoliberal system is not serving us well. Our continent has stagnated, and they are coming back to exploit it again. So we need to start exploring a lot of things aggressively. I know you spoke about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Yeah, and that I think your colleague or your sister who has spoken about it and said that the African Continental Free Trade Area could be an entity, a scheme where they are coming to exploit it and exploit Africa further. And I would like to agree more, I think, with the person, because for a long time, for a very long time, the exploitation definitely has been going on. But also, when you look at what Nkrumah was saying when he spoke in 1963, he said that the African unity is above all a political kingdom. Okay.
Yes.
It is a political kingdom which can only be attained by political means. The economic and social well-being of the Africans will come through that political means and not the other way around. So what Nkrumah means by other way around is that we are not going to pursue political schemes, political projects. I mean, we are not going to pursue economic projects like the Africa Continental Free Trade Area before we have a government.
Yes.
And this has been my argument with those people who are supporting the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Now, this is not to suggest that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is a bad scheme. It is a good scheme if it is implemented in the right context. But we don't have industries. The Europeans and the Anglo-Saxons are fighting against our energy policies. They don't want us to industrialize. They want to retain ownership of our markets. So they want to penetrate and assemble products from here, not manufacture, assemble. Manufacture products from Europe and assemble them from here. And say that they are manufacturing, they are made in Africa, and consume our markets and continue to benefit Europe and the United States using the Africa Continental Free Trade. So this is where the idea, the issue of unifying Africa politically, as Nkrumah said, politically first. And we have these groups of people at the at the African Union who are being influenced by the United Nations and the Europeans and the Anglo-Saxons that they should implement the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area, like we have said, we have not stood against it, but it has to be implemented in the right context. Yes. We have to look at the unifying of the continent, unifying Africa politically first, before the Africa Continental Free Trade Area can be effective. Otherwise, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is an opening, is a loophole for exploitation, for further exploitation of our continent by other civilizations which have already superior capabilities in manufacturing. We have not mastered manufacturing. We don't have industries that are going to manufacture these products that we are talking about, that we want to exchange. So what are we going to exchange as Africans, really? So this is where the question comes in.
Yeah, I guess.
And what type of Africa Continental Free Trade Area are we implementing if we don't have, if the manufacturing is not in the hands of the Africans, and Africa is not manufacturing?
We don't have a platform.
No airplanes, no trains, no automobiles, no semiconductors. So what is it that we are trading? Are we going to merely trade in agricultural products, cocoa, and what else?
Okay, I guess
this is where the question on this is where I have a question on the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, because it doesn't have not even implementation. It's implementation. There's no enforcing. We don't have a body without the Union Government of African states. There's no way we can enforce the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. There's no way we can enforce it. Countries will keep erecting barriers, indiscipline, all types of indiscipline will keep, going on, like what we had recently, Nigeria blocking goods from Ghana, and Rwanda was blocking goods crossing the border. So everyone will just behave with impunity, act with impunity, and destroy the whole thing. So this is where the problem is. But the major problem is exploitation of this Africa Continental Free Trade Area by foreigners. That is the biggest challenge.
Okay, you see, my brother, I had to actually interject you, I guess, this time around, because you are giving me way too much noise to work with. And I actually have to confess something now. I'm thinking of starting to publish my notes, the notes that I make while we're actually in this. I've decided that I can put them together into a book and actually sell them. And then that's the economics that I guess you can look into to say if anyone wants to buy the notes, they are available. Because right now I filled a page just with what you said now. And the first page that I filled was with regards to the US and using what they call a rule-based order to actually rule the rest of the world. I've got those kind of notes which are just sitting there. I can print all of them. I actually just write them as notes using a stylus. So as you are speaking, I'm taking notes. The problem is that, my brother, you are giving me too much to work with. I don't know where to start now. But then, okay, I'm just going to read through the notes as they were coming. If we put the free trade area on trial, you said that Africa must manufacture. Africa must not assemble. What is the Africa Continental Free Trade Area saying about that? You are saying that there is no implementation. I have not yet studied it. And the fact that you agree with my sister, it's actually an indictment. It actually boosts my morale.
Yeah, the implementation is there. They are saying that they are trying to, we have, the Secretary General at the Secretariat in Accra, Wemekele Mene. He's the one who's driving this. I've been following him on his Twitter, following him on the various social media networks, and he's trying definitely to implement. But what we are saying is that without agency of a political body that will monitor and enforce means people are supposed to adhere to certain rules. Now, this is not to suggest that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area doesn't currently have rules. They have rules which they are working on. But we know, you and I know our history in these things. We know what has been happening with SADC. We know what has been happening with the East African Community. We know what has been happening with the ECOWAS, that these organizations have failed to work. You see, it takes a long time. We know what has been happening with the African Union. Okay? That member states are able to come up and block another country and put up some justification. And the best we can do is conflict resolution on the issue that is happening. Okay, the best we can do is conflict resolution on the issue of the day. So this is what we are saying, that without a united African government, which we are demanding, a political union of African states, these projects are a failure. That is why SADC, that is why East African Community, that is why ECOWAS, all these organizations have failed. That is why they have failed, because there's no big brother to enforce what has been agreed on. In 2014, the African presidents agreed and signed into force the African passport. Has that African passport ever been given out? 10 years, we are 10 years down the line, and the African passport has not been distributed, has not been given to Africans. They are still giving out national passport, South African. Why? Dangote, the richest, Mr. Dangote, the richest black man in the world, complained about the passport because the passport to a certain level was given to those African presidents and maybe the so-called elites and important people and the richest, the Strive Masiwas and the Dangotes and the Mo Ibrahims and all those. But even those people, they are not able to use the African Union passport. Dangote complained that when he travels with the African Union passport, he's blocked from entering countries like Cameroon. He went to Cameroon and they were asking him, where is his visa? When someone is having the African Union passport, why would you ask him for a visa? So this is where the problem comes in, that when these agreements are signed, Africa Continental Free Trade Area, passport for Africa, when all these are signed without any enforcing body, then member states will just really get them to the back. my brother, I was talking about the signing and the launching of the African Union passport. It was launched
Yes.
under President under the chairperson of the African Union Commission in Nkosazana Zuma and Kagame in Kigali in 2014. That passport, we are 10 years down the line. The passport has never been given out.
Yeah,
Where
I
is it?
guess it actually indicts everything that the AU does.
Where is it? So this should show you that this claim that they are working on Africa Continental Free Trade Area, if it is going to work, it is not going to work for us. It is going to be working for foreigners, the Europeans, the Americans, the Asians who will come here and take advantage of the market, because we will not have that ability to manufacture the goods for ourselves. We don't have the manufacturing capacity. So that is what I was trying to say, that we need a unified political body first. We need the military to protect our market. Okay, we can't accumulate all this wealth without a military. We have to have a single military who's going to protect that wealth. Other people need this wealth and they will come and take it. You are seeing what the United States is trying to do to China. It's trying to go and steal. You are seeing what happened to Afghanistan. Go and steal 7 billion from Afghanistan. The United States just went and steal money from these people. They are stealing Syria's oil. So without security, what kind of Africa Continental Free Trade Area are we building to accumulate wealth without security, without a political body? So that is where my indictment of this strategy of implementing the Africa Continental Free Trade Area first before the union government, which Nkrumah, recommended and which he suggested to us. And I think we have to stop minimizing our ancestors and their struggles and their sacrifices and what they went through.
Yes.
Because they gave us what we are supposed to be doing, but different leaders on this continent decided to go and consult with the Europeans, the Anglo-Saxons. So I think it becomes very disappointing in a certain area, in that area.
Yeah, okay. I want to come in because when I broke, I was actually saying that you've given me way too much to work with. But then every time we invoke Nkrumah, I actually have to take that bait. We've already said that Nkrumah wrote himself down. In 21 books, you can find Nkrumah. And we know that in 63, OAU, the Organization for African Unity, is a compromise on Nkrumah's side. And it is a compromise towards the man I want to talk to right now. You looked at Julius Nyerere. And today I was speaking to my young cousin. Actually, he's my nephew. And he said that we do not really look at the actual Nyerere. He gave that a critique, but then I did remind him that Prof. PLO has actually invoked the actual Nyerere as the Archbishop who was anointing freedom fighters all throughout the African continent. I mean, yes, Nkrumah was training them in Ghana. He was giving them ideological a soldier without a political ideology is a potential criminal. Nkrumah was making the point that the people who went to Ghana had a political ideology, the people first. That is why when Robert Sobukwe is in Ghana in the 70s, the 60s, he actually speaks to the fact that we as a people are not yet ready. We are actually ready to die for our freedom, but we are not yet actually ready to kill for it. This is the development of the great Mangaliso Sobukwe. I want to speak to this issue of Nyerere, because who is Nyerere? Prof. PLO says that Nyerere was the Archbishop in the Dar es Salaam University who was giving internationally recognized qualifications to the national liberation fighters. And PLO actually romanticizes the situation to say that Nyerere would go and say, there, I charge you, go and set your country free. Nyerere has written Ujama, the socialist view of the African people, because my young nephew is actually crying to say that why are we not looking at who Nyerere is? What did Nyerere say? Nyerere speaks about the ideology of Africa, the oneness of Africa, to say that he has come to realize. Nyerere is giving speeches in the early 90s to say that he has realized that the oneness of Africa is undisputable. We cannot give the sovereignty of the development of our countries to something called private capital. He is a socialist, he's a communist who's saying that we can do it. He actually goes further to do in his speeches what Nkrumah tried and attempted to actually achieve towards the parliamentary process, to actually establish a people's assembly, something that you can commend Muammar Gaddafi for actually maintaining in Libya, a people's assembly. The brotherly leader, Muammar Gaddafi, established a people's Jamhuriya in Libya. It is unfortunate that when the time came, the Jamhuriya did not work to protect its own leader. But then Nyerere says that we don't need multi democracy parties in South Africa or multi-democracy, whatever. He says that we are in agreement. We are not disagreeing with one another. We are in agreement. We understand that in the West, there might be jostling interests. We understand that in the West, Total can want to destroy the climate in South Africa and want to preserve the climate in Uganda. So Total can have two competing interests. But then when it comes to the African people, as advocated for by Nyerere, he says that they are in agreement. They just need the Communist Party of China to come and be the avant-garde. Okay, now they're going to start calling me a communist, and it's going to be a problem, but then we can continue. I'm already off Twitter for like a week, and I'm actually thinking.
So I think that when we are talking about a single party, Nkrumah saw it. That is why in the book, the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, one of the things he recommended in Nkrumah was the formation of a single party on the African continent, which every African should subscribe to. And that party he called it the All Africa People Revolutionary Party. And the formation of All African People Revolutionary Army. So that was supposed to carry out the revolutionary work, the armed struggle, because he believed that Africa's struggle has entered the phase of armed struggle, whereby we have to take the continent politically by force from the neo-colonial forces. I think that is the idea which you are talking about also when we are talking about Nyerere and the idea of having something like a communist party like what is in China, so that we can have a single party to which we can all subscribe to. So our time is running out real quick, but what we will do is that we want to run through real quick on the happenings that happened in the past weeks. We spoke about President Ramaphosa and his engagement with Biden. We spoke about the President Ruto and his swearing in before he went to the burial of the Queen. The attendance.
Let me submit something on Ruto.
I just want to summarize them, and then we will come back and then just wrap it. So we had that issue that during the swearing in of President Ruto, there was a lot of African presidents who attended, especially from the East African community and South African parts, the East and South. And it is unfortunate that I did hear, even though I heard that ECOWAS was going to send President Nana Addo to attend, but he did not attend. President Nana Addo did not attend. So I think that it is important that as Africans, when we have events like this, all the presidents on the African continent, all of us have to attend. All African presidents have to find time to attend these events. This is the only way we can show solidarity on this African continent and show that we are one African. And Kenya has gone through a very important election where, because Kenya is considered, when we are talking about diplomacy, Kenya is considered a powerhouse on this continent because they know a lot about diplomacy. That country knows a lot about diplomacy. And it is a powerhouse. It's an economic powerhouse on this continent. So it was important for all African leaders, to be there. But it is unfortunate that very few sent their leaders. Not many. from the north, from the northern part of the continent, from the western part of the continent, and then the central part of the continent. But
Yeah.
President Museveni was there, President Suluhu from Kenya was there, Kagame was there, majority of Evariste from Burundi was there, the president or prime minister of Eswatini was there, Guinea Bissau, President Embalu was there, Dangote. I think President Embalu from Guinea-Bissau is the one who represented ECOWAS because he's the current president, sitting president of the of ECOWAS. Then Dangote also was there because Dangote has interests in Kenya. He wants to invest in Kenya's lime to produce cement in Kenya. So Dangote himself was there. He appeared. And then we also had the swearing in of President Lourenço of Angola. We remember he also won his elections. It's very important that we shed light, even though that election in Angola has not been published on a wide scale. But we need to pay attention because we are Africans and Africa is our business. So everything that goes on there, we need to understand. Just to give some tip, to the viewers, Angola is one of the countries which had succeeded in building their own state-owned oil corporation called Sonangol. Sonangol reached even to a certain level that it was able to go and drill in Iraq before the invasion of Iraq. So it was a very, very successful state-run oil company, which other African countries can copy. Nigerian National Oil Corporation, they can work together with all these, together, the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation. So these are all corporations which can learn from each other, but unfortunately, they are facing some challenges. Wodimaya, the African renowned YouTube, also married his longtime Kenyan girlfriend in Kenya. We want to say congratulations to them. And Wodimaya was even able to say that he envisions that this union between a Ghanaian Wodimaya and his Kenyan girlfriend will bring the continent together. And this is what we want to see. This is really what we want to see, honestly, I'm telling you. And we want to encourage all, the young Africans cross the continent and go and marry on the other side of the continent. We have to use all means necessary, like what our ancestor Malcolm X said, all means necessary to unify Africa. If it means marriages on this continent, they are the ones which are going to unify the continent. The young people have to engage in all kind of strategies, all kind of approaches of unifying Africa. So I want to say congratulations to Wodimaya for his marriage to his girlfriend, his fiancée, Miss Trudy, who is currently his wife, and his wife is from Kenya. Even though myself, I'm also from the other part, the eastern part of the continent. I plan also to be like Wodimaya. I will go to the western part and also take my wife from there. Yes, so that's what we should be doing. So we want to congratulate Wodimaya on this, new enterprise he has entered into, the institution of marriage. Mali also was able to invite the military leaders, the ones who carried out the coup in Burkina Faso. So they came together to dialogue, and I think it is important because Mali has shown sentiments, the Pan-African sentiments. So if they came together to dialogue on a strategy on how to dislodge France from West Africa, we would welcome such developments. These are very, very important developments. Dr. Alikana also is planning to host a Pan-African Congress, which he called the Pan-African Congress in Zimbabwe at the Mwitosunya Falls. I think they are the largest falls in Africa, in Zimbabwe, or what yes. Other people who want to call the Victoria Falls. They are not Victoria Falls. We want to say that they are called the Mwitosunya Falls. So that's where she's going to have that conference, Pan-African Conference. But majorly it is not generally for Pan-African organizations, but it is for the diaspora. She's trying to mobilize the
Yes.
diaspora into coming to invest in Africa and staying in Africa, to take their position in Africa, to take up their citizenship in an African country. So they are engaged in this struggle. So we want to encourage Dr. Arikana to continue in her struggle, and we want to say thank you, Mama, for doing a great job which you are doing for all the African people around the world. Turkey, a few days ago, a few weeks ago, Turkey also dismissed on the international stage, dismissed France's claims that Turkey, China, and Russia were smearing France's image on the African continent, because France came to Algeria after their misbehavior, and putting sanctions on Russia. They are facing energy problems, so they decided to go around the world, like how you saw Biden went to Saudi Arabia and he was resisted. So France also was moving around to try to go and beg for oil, like how Biden was in Saudi Arabia to try to beg for oil, and he was also in Venezuela, and they were all resisting his advances. So Macron of France went to Algeria to try to beg for oil, and they resisted him. Even the people, the citizens in Algeria, almost they wanted to beat him. He was forcing himself to them, or onto them, and try to greet them, and they were resisting him. And he saw hostility over there. So when he went back, he claimed that Turkey, China, and Russia are smearing France's name in Africa. And so Africans are tired of France because it is the problems of Russia and China and Turkey. So Turkey responded by saying that it is not them, but it is rather France. We should look at its history of engagement with the continent, its neo-colonialism, its colonialism, and its slavery on the continent. Because the people on the continent, however much France and the Anglo-Saxons say that the people on the continent should forget about slavery and colonialism, that our people should forget about this, the people have not forgotten. So Turkey pointed out that France needs to confront its history and its past and its violation of human rights on the African continent. This is why the African people are rejecting France on the African continent. And then we had the speeches at at the United Nations General Assembly. We have the United Nations General Assembly. A lot of speeches were given. In our next presentation, we will come up to scrutinize. We'll get a day within the coming week to scrutinize these speeches and who said what. South Africa spoke, Mali spoke. Mali gave a very good speech where it was able to respond to France and its disturbance. France is disturbing Mali, is continuing to sponsor the terrorists in the Sahel. That is what France is trying to do. And Mali came out strongly to condemn this, even at the United Nations, but it had complained before, and also to complain against MONUSCO. And President Tshisekedi also has agreed and has continued to voice out the idea that the United Nations should evaluate itself and leave the Democratic Republic of Congo, so that the East African community and East Africa standby force can come in to stabilize the East African region. Then the normal movement was able to march onto the White House. The Ethiopian diaspora was able to organize other Africans in the United States to march onto the White House to demonstrate against Washington because of the way it is being sponsoring the TPLF rebels and destabilizing Ethiopia. Because we understand that before the COVID came, Ethiopia was the fastest growing economy on the African continent. It was growing between 7 and 10%, so which was a very good figure. So there is an attempt by the United States to destabilize Ethiopia, because Ethiopia was carrying out a lot of reforms within and attracting a lot of investment, especially factories and industries from China, which the United States has tried to demonize in the last period. So the African diaspora, led by the Ethiopian diaspora, were able to organize a march on the White House and demonstrate at the White House, last week, which was a very successful a demonstration, and we want to encourage them to move in this direction. So, my brother, if you want to comment on anything else, I think you can take it from there as we close up, or you can put out your last remarks as we close up. But next time we will come to scrutinize, to digest the speeches and what was said at the United Nations General Assembly this week.
Yes, let me start with that one that you're leaving. You're just getting away from the UNGA 77. And allow me to start with the dramatic. I've noted about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. About 9 issues which I need to put within this time. But then I need to start it dramatically because her name is Sweetness, Miss Madame Naledi Pando. Naledi means star. Her name is Sweetness, and her name is I was actually checking her profile from the website SA History. Her name is Grace Naledi Mandisa. And she is the one who ended up, because of the energy crisis in South Africa, she's the one who had to represent South Africa at the UNGA 77. What is coming out of that, without going into details of the speech, there's 2 songs and Zim sanctions. There's 2 songs, and one of them is the Zim sanctions. Sanctions against Zim are unilateral by the US, and then sanctions against Cuba and the embargo against Cuba is unilateral and against international law. All countries of the world are singing that song, which made me worried. Like I said, the last time we met, remember, I did say that Cornel West discusses will America pounce? I wrote that as my first page. My first page is whether America will pounce or not, as it's a waning superpower. It is not going to simply surrender itself to the entire world for tearing apart and for their military to be downsized. It's not going to do that. It is going to use their military might to actually push back. Now, are we actually prepared for the pushback that the United States can give? Are we actually prepared for the military might of the US? The US has a mighty army. I mean, the US Army is the biggest employer in the world. And remember what Snowden says. Snowden says all those soldiers are broken down before they are made. So when I talk about that, I need for us to congratulate Wode. Okay. Very, very progressive stuff. Very progressive stuff. I mean, Brother Gonza is mentioning that he is still trying to go into other countries to find this significant other. Well, I guess the ladies know. I guess the ladies in KNII will know. I mean, the ladies who are watching Africa Reimagined will know. Those who watch Africa Roundup will know. But then you calling it an institution, the place of marriage. I mean, the place of love, not marriage necessarily. This place, I don't want to call it an institution of marriage. It's a place of love. There's 2 people who find one another, they love one another, they are trying to establish an ancestry together. It's an ancestry that they are trying to establish. And Wode, we appreciate my brother, because it is through Wode that some of us as researchers actually see the correct Africa. The real Africa is what Wode is talking about. The real Africa is when Wode, through Rutendo, actually told me that in the middle of Harare there is the Union Jack. And when you talk about the Union Jack, you're talking about the flag of the United Kingdom and her empire. So that is why it is also in Harare. And that is where Dr. Mitole actually operates. And by the way, I'm running through the notes as we speak. Dr. Mitole is saying that we need to divorce ourselves from the Western neo-colonial, neo-imperialist pseudo-democracy that they are bringing to the continent, because we need sovereignty. We need sovereignty. And what is the cost? I'm also bringing in another one. What is the cost of the multinational companies in South Africa right now? There is a road in Durban, in the KwaZulu-Natal province, the N2. It has been overtaken by trucks delivering God knows what, a number of things. The road is always full of trucks. There was a truck which mauled there's too many accidents. I'm not going to go into details, but the cost of the energy crisis, the cost of the Europe increasing their sales, their purchases rather, of coal, is because there's supposed to be a lot of trucks on the roads, which actually end up causing problems. There is another accident whereby an African brother was actually documenting an accident, saying, "Ah, guys, look, there was an accident," but then a truck mauled into that accident, caused it, and I think it was an oil tanker, caused a very huge explosion. That is the human cost. I need the people in Europe, the people in America, the people in the West to actually know that what are they actually causing. Yes, we know you should support Ukraine. You should, but then how are you supporting Ukraine? Are you supporting Ukraine by perpetuating an evil by the world powers who are trying to, like, it's, I'm gonna call it as it is, it's big dick diplomacy, whereby who has to negotiate with who. People don't want to negotiate with their superiors, and everyone, whenever they say there's a negotiation, they are sending their inferiors, so that the other, like you said, when African presidents go to the Western countries, they need to have their presidents, their counterparts, not that you are going to meet with
Yes,
another
yes,
president
yes.
and actually make sound decisions. But no, the people in the West are actually supporting Ukraine's military might. Is the military industrial complex. We are working on bringing two guests for the UNGA 77. We are going to bring Dr. Mitole. We are going to bring Dr. Kolani Dube, who is a very nationalist activist in South Africa. And so we want to bring them to actually give perspectives of what exactly is the human cost of the fact that we have divorced who we are. And that's why we have to honor Wode. I mean, when you go into Angola, the significance of Angola is being undermined, because it was not,
Yes.
yeah, it was not by chance that the United States and the communist East, Cuba, which is in the West, and Russia, which is in the East, they had to actually assemble. Remember that Ukraine is what Angola was in the 60s. Ukraine is what Angola was back then. The Battle of Cunaval, that is a battle that was being fought. It's a Cold War in play. Exactly what is happening in Ukraine now. Let's ask ourselves, what did the entire national army do then? And then as for Dr. Arikama, she is doing a lot more, especially as you said, with the diaspora, conscientizing the diaspora. And she's an economist. I mean, she is going after the economic side of it to say that people like you and me need to have funders. And then Dr. Arikana is opening spaces for those who've got passion in media and media intelligence to invest in order, to invest in real documentation of what is happening, because we are painting a picture. I've got a question to end with. I'm not going to touch on Turkey and the Russia bill, which is in the United States House of Representatives. I'll touch on that when we talk about geopolitics in during the week. I want to end with the dramatic. I started with the dramatic, I'll end with the dramatic. The Diaries of Anne Frank. The Diaries of Anne Frank, because we are talking independent media. We are talking people who experience tragedies and actually document them. What are we going to do? What are we doing right now to prevent the Diaries of Anne Frank from happening? They are happening today to a child in Ukraine, and we are presiding over that. I want us to divorce ourselves from thinking that we can actually solve anything with power. As Einstein said, he is a Jew who was actually approached by the Jewish state Israel to become their president, though he refused. But he said something, whether is the world going to shun? Are we going to end ourselves as humanity? Are we going to end the whole concept of civilization and humanism? I mean, the dinosaurs were taken out, as it is documented, by meteorites, the climate change, and then, but we are going to take ourselves out, because the wars that we perpetuate is basically, we are against ourselves as human beings. I mean, as a global community, we are against ourselves. So yeah, my brother, I think with that, and unless you've got any other questions, we will sing congratulations to Wode, and hopefully we are invited to the wedding, or we can broadcast some aspects of it.
The wedding was finished. They carried it out in Kenya. It was in Kenya. It was a simple.
Nice.
It was a private, simple wedding, and people gave them gifts. I think they gave them apartments, 2 apartments, one for the wife. Someone just offered them apartments because Wodema is very popular. So we want to say, Wodema, a good job you are doing for our continent, and a good job on the step you have taken. Congratulations on the step you have taken. We thank you very much for putting up our continent up there. So thank you, my brother Titi, for the presentation today and the deliberations which we had. We will continue to have these deliberations. All those people who are watching, thank you very much for hanging with us up to right now. We will deposit a link, 3 links in the description, and those links are about signing petitions. We are talking about unifying the continent. In the first petition, we are demanding for United African State. Petition number 2, we are demanding for a single African passport to be implemented as it was, and a single currency. And we are demanding for formation of a single military force on the African continent. So those petitions, I'm posting them down in the comment section and the description, so you can just click on them and go to and sign them, because we are looking for 1 million signatures for each of the petitions. Those petitions have been endorsed by the PLO Lumumba Foundation. We are working with them. We are working with the Pan-African Daily TV, Dr. Susan, Dr. Edmond Folfak, from Ohio State University Medical Center. So we are working with a lot of people, Sister Shanice, all these people, we are working with them. So we want to invite you to sign those petitions and share them with 2 of your favorite contacts in your WhatsApp or Telegram or anywhere, and encourage them to do the same, because we are the next generation that has to fight for this continent. So thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. Africa must unite. Africa must unite.
Africa must unite, and in the words of Gavi, we are supposed to rise up, ye mighty race. Thank you, my brother.
Okay, bye-bye.